I'm delighted this morning to be joined by my good friend and co-conspirator, as Rob would call Patty. Just before Patty comes online, and it's quite a surreal kind of way to be starting the Talent Summit, standing talking in a room to myself, but it's probably not that different than what I'm used to. Nobody listens to me anyway. So Patty has had, as most of you guys know, an extensive career working with companies of all sizes. And I think the one thing she has always said to me is that she has watched over those years how companies become slow and complacent, and how employees can equally become sometimes whingy and cynical as a result. In the 14 years that she spent with Netflix alongside her other co-conspirator, Reed Hastings, she really did transform HR, and I know that's what we're all super excited to hear about. As Sheryl Sandberg quoted, the famous Culture Code document was potentially the most important document to come out of Silicon Valley. Outside of that, she is now a best-selling author. She's a TED speaker. She's a contributor to the likes of Harvard Business Review and NPR and all of these kind of great publications. But I suppose most importantly for me, she is an incredible human being. She's a mom, a grandmother, controversially has apparently the most incredible granddaughter in the world. And she also is about to become I don't know if it's a grandmother again, is what you'd call it, to a fish who was originally called Wanda, but was originally called Walter, but is now called Wanda. So what I'd like to do is, I suppose, just to welcome Patty. I am reliably informed she is awake, she is caffeinated, and most importantly, she has hard pants on. So good morning, Patty.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I know Rob McGulla Fogarty is somewhere in the wings, absolutely petrified of letting the two of us free on any kind of screens chatting to human beings.
He should be.
I think it's only fair, isn't it? So I suppose to kick us off, Patty, when we did a quick prep run for this, we spent about 2.5 hours on the phone, and I'd say about 2 hours 30 minutes in, we realised we hadn't actually yet talked about the Talent Summit. So for anybody who's particularly worried about what this chat's going to be like, it has 3 distinct parts. The first part where I go, oh God, Patty, what would you do if you were in our position? Then the second part where I go, right, how would you go about doing that? And then the third part, which will be the winning streak, Patty, it's when we're going to take the crowd with us, is when we go, oh God, what would you do if somebody tried to stop you or it all went horribly wrong? So that's kind of after coming off the back of Dave Ulrich with all the research, that's where we're going to hit into Patty. So good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sorry, I should let you speak a bit because everybody's here to see you, not me.
No, I was listening to the end to part of David Ulrich speak too, and I got to tell you, when he said, they did all the research, and the most important stuff that we do is put the right people in the right place at the right time.
Amen.
A little weepy. It reminded me of when Facebook? No, Google did a 5-year research, and they went through all the data on all their managers and what made them, what was a great manager,
Project Aristotle. Yes.
All this stuff. And you know what they found out? It's like people who lead well and are really clear communicators and tell people what they're attempting to do in the end, not what to do every day. I was like,
go figure.
Amazing.
It's always good to have a bit of research there to back up what you intrinsically know as a person.
But you know what was interesting about that was Laszlo Bach, who's the head of HR at the time, said to me, I could tell them that until forever.
Yeah.
They only listened to the data, right? So the data became his megaphone so that he could use that. So I guess, you and I have spent so much time together recently. I feel like, let's just get going. Let's start, right?
Let's just get going. Let's start at the start, right? So let's start with the proper questions and then we can get to the fun ones at the end. And so we'll tick the box on those first. But I know, joking aside. So Patty, I suppose, given the backdrop of everything we've chatted about today, if we took you back, if you were a HRM, a HRD, a CPO, you were in that kind of HR transformational role right now, how would you actually be using this as an opportunity to transform how people work? What would you be doing? What would you be thinking about?
Yeah, I was thinking, one of the questions was, how should we start?
Yeah.
And I think the real question is, first stop.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. This is such a moment. This year has been so crazy. Yeah. It's really, really important that we pause and we look back on this last year really, really critically and say, boy, what did we do wrong? What could we have done better? Where was our timing off? And then another sort of holy, what did we do that we'd never imagined that we could do?
Yeah.
Because all of us have had such profound changes in the way we work and how we relate to each other. And, I remember early on people saying, yeah, that in-person meeting on Zoom, that really sucked.
Of course.
It was a fun in-person meeting, but it was terrible. 14 people in the room, only 2 people talk. That's email.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
So I think that now is a really, really important time to make sure that we set aside enough time to reflect. Lovely. And then, the rest of our talk is going to be about what to do next. Yeah. And then as for me, what not to do next.
100%. And so when we kind of think about that, because I think that's probably one thing that we're all so action orientated. So we all like to just jump in and start doing new stuff. So first, as you're saying, just stop in general and actually engage brain. So that's great first starting point. When we think about transformation, Patty, and I don't want to kind of spend all of this time talking about Netflix, but what I'm really curious to talk about with you is how you think, what principles and how you think about people. So when you're going and you're re-engineering the world of work, or you're working with business leaders, and I'm sure we've all had experiences that sometimes you're working with business leaders or HR people, and they may have very clear principles of how they think about people, and other times not so clear. And I suppose maybe that's another thing for us to say, is that if you don't have clear principles, maybe start to get some, right? And I don't mean that in a smart way, but just actually think about it. But for you, if it was Patty's principles, how would you think about people before you even start to think about transformation? What would be those foundation blocks?
I would say 2 things. One of them is, in terms of transformation, we're never done.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's something that always happens. And the company of tomorrow is not the company that you work at today. And if it is, then you're probably losing. Right. Yeah. When I coach a little startup, I'll say to them, there's only 3 endings to this story.
Yeah.
You get bigger, you get smaller, you get eaten.
Great.
Smaller.
As the founder of a startup, I'm really pumped right now.
No, but I mean, but what my point is, smaller's death, right? So it's going to change. You're going to be highly successful on your own, or you're going to be highly successful as a part of another entity. So what is the principle that drives you to whatever that end is? Nice. And what's been really wonderful and scary during the pandemic is a lot of the things that I've been saying that people say, oh, that's not true, that's easy for you, have turned out to be true and easy for them. So guess what? Everybody who works for you is an adult. From the CEO to the person who's cleaning the bathroom, if you're still going to work and have the bath, and somebody at home is cleaning the bathroom. So that idea that, there's this hierarchy we have of sort of goodness and responsibility. The good people, the responsible people are the ones in management. And then you sort of flow down to, well, those people on the bottom, we have to treat them like children because they're not. We're all adults.
Yeah.
So that's the first one, right? We all have we're all adults. We all have we all have other responsibilities outside of work. And now we can literally see it. And those adults aren't 2 separate adults. There's not the home adult and the work adult. They're the same person.
And it's interesting because sometimes it's super easy. I've noticed it even for us as a startup. You start off and you go, right, what are our principles around something? And it's super easy to say we're all adults, right? But it's actually so much harder to actually make those decisions day to day, right? Because it's really easy to say it and put it on the website and put on a T-shirt or whatever. Much harder when it comes to the crunch, right?
Right, and you're in HR and somebody comes in and says, what's our policy on some stupid thing, right? And you're like, I don't know, what would a grown-up say in this situation? Call me crazy, right? You can make the policy yourself by being, an adult. The other thing that I think has been really clear is that people are more responsible than we give them credit for. HR has become, over the last couple of decades, this weird schizophrenic. I mean, I don't know how you operate in a world where half of your time is spent protecting the company from those evil employees that might sue you. And the other half of your time is spent making sure they can get really groovy T-shirts and hoodies and they're gloriously happy and engaged. It's that doesn't make any sense.
No.
So, what we've found is that people will work because they enjoy it. People will work because they're responsible. People will work because you told them to, and that we can now judge output. And we don't have to walk around and go, yep, there's Michelle, she's working. Meanwhile, you're playing Candy Crush, right? But I don't know. I see you.
Well, I'm good at it, in
but I
fairness.
know, I know what you're doing because I can see your results now. Because now that's what we're paying attention to. Did it get done? And we have to trust people that say, okay, signing off now, I'll get you that on Friday, that they will. And here's the big aha. They always could. They always did. Right. I mean, this is the part that's so heartwarming for me is like people aren't behaving any different. We're learning a ton about the importance of in-person feedback, in the moment feedback, which is a really big principle for me. And I believe in it because partly because I think that, you know, I always say, if I'm going to stab you in the back, I got to get a knife. You got to turn around. I got to stab you. Hopefully, I'm going to kill you. I got to get rid of the body. I mean, you know, all of this office politics and the subterfuge. It's really time consuming.
Oh, yeah. It's exhausting.
So the thing about efficiency, if you want your company to run really efficiently, then you're going to hire adults. You're going to assume that they're going to be responsible. You're going to assume that they're smart. Don't hire anybody who isn't, right? And then you're going to just make sure that we stay in touch so that, you know, I can catch you in the moment. I can catch you in the moment and go, oh my God, what you're doing right now, that's it. This is exactly what we talked about, right? That kind of feedback. Like, you know, people forget that feedback always also means catching somebody doing something right.
100%.
And then if it's wrong, I can go, you know, that's not working. Have you thought about trying it a different way? Or why are you, I don't get what's up, right? I don't understand why there's conflict here. Where are you coming from, right? So that's another part of one of my principles. And then I was thinking about the call before I came on and I thought, I wonder what happens when we go forward. I'm not going to say we go back. You and I promise you, I will never say we go back. But I wonder if people aren't going to move around more, right? We've all been kind of frozen in place. And one of my deep principles is to create an organization that's a great place to be from. And I want that really to sink into people. If you thought that that was your job, to create an organization where people were proud of what they did, a great place to be from, might you think about it very differently?
That's it, isn't
right?
it?
So now, you know, I talk about, and we'll talk about this later when we talk about management, but, you know, I say create CV-worthy events, right? Make sure that as your teams move along and you're growing, that everything you do, that you market as an event that you could put on your
100%.
series, because that's what teams do. And so I just think we're not a family.
No.
We're not in it for the fun. We can see that now, right? We can really see that now because you see people's family.
Well, they're usually
in the back.
of course.
I've had a lot of conversation with cats, and that's fine with me.
Well, in fairness, that's what the internet was created for. Let's just clarify that as a tech owner.
That's correct, and now they're back again. So, I've realized also that it's an opportunity for us in HR to be doing, to see now what's moving our businesses forward without seeing or paying attention to what we're doing. And I have in my notes, you and I talked, when we talked in our 2.5-hour prep, we talked about a concept of death by 1,000 cuts. And I think that's what we do in HR sometimes. We ask people to do all these little, did you fill out the form? Did you complete the agenda? Did you do your survey? Did you fill out your requisition? Are you in budget? Did you get permission? And those tiny little instances that people have to do every day are what makes people crazy.
It just wears
because they interrupt your workflow. And so, one of my deepest principles for my organization was to, our most important job was to get out of the way. So the brilliant people that we hire can do the brilliant work we need them to do. But I said to my HR team one time, it's true. We are a service organization. It's not spelled SERVANTS.
I love that.
And the people we serve don't work here.
And don't
right.
you
The
think,
people who
Patty,
serve our customers.
Yeah, I think when you and I talked last with Rob back in March at, I don't know what event we were at, but we were at something anyway, and one of the things that we talked about was the beauty. Forgive me for saying the beauty of COVID, but one of the good upsides to this is that it's stripped away all the stuff. So people would say to me all the time, oh, you worked at Twitter, you worked at Blizzard, you worked at all these fancy companies. But what COVID has done is it's stripped it away, and now it's back to what it always was about, right? Which is like the quality of the work you're doing and the quality of the people you work with. And it doesn't matter anymore if you work for Twitter or Google or Beats or whoever you work for, because you're still sitting in your living room. And it's down to back to basics, right?
Here's another thing that just makes my little heart beat fast, right? So when I do this, when I talk to people, they're like, "Who's doing it right?" And I say, "Nobody." Finally, thank God there are no best practices.
Amen.
Right? I mean, we don't have, who cares what Google's doing?
Yeah.
Whatever it is they do, right? We don't need to do it like they do it, because we're living in our own worlds and our own realities with our own customers. And you're right. And we're all sitting here in our pajamas doing work.
And it is that bit, isn't it, of newsflash. Like, I loved the idea of when Rob said to us, and like, I'm sure he's equal parts terrified of putting us together, but I love that piece of like, you know, like people say to me all the time, like, you've worked for all these really fancy companies. And I'm like, yeah, and you know what? They were broken too. Like, they might have had amazing products and there was a million amazing things we did, but we still had all the same challenges and all the same crap that everyone else has. It's not like Netflix was this mystical land where you went to the talent island and brought it back and everything was
perfect. I was just thinking about, here we go tangenting again.
Oh,
but
God, no, Rob will kill us.
I was exactly thinking about that this morning because, you know, people were talking about the talent thing, right? How do you get A players? I was thinking about A players.
Oh, yeah.
And I told you that story. I would tell people, well, there's an island only I know about, and all the A players are there.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking about, Michelle, was in our conversation, you and I were reminiscing a little bit about like the sucky companies we've been at, right? And what I was thinking of one company in particular that I worked at, and in reflection, you know what they did wrong?
Go on.
They kept me.
It's actually,
and they shouldn't have, right? This was a company where my boss said to me, true story, she said, you know, Patty, you have a lot of ideas and we've had them all and they don't work. So it would be really helpful if you would just stop having them.
Yeah.
And you know what? Looking back, what I learned from that company, they were very, very administrative and they were very proud of it. And that's what the company wanted from this HR team. Yeah. And when I look back, I realized they gave me a great appreciation for people who are really good at that.
Yeah.
You know, the people that wake up in the middle of the night and can't sleep because they spelled somebody's name wrong. and I'm not, right? But I need those kind of people on my team.
100%.
So, you know, when we start talking about talent, it's about that match, right?
Yeah.
The A player is the person who's really good at and capable of solving the problem that you have in front of you. And trust me, when they're doing it, guess what? They're engaged.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Shocking.
But it's not. It's not a special type of person, right? And performance is relative to what the problem is you're trying to solve.
Yeah, it really isn't. And I know, like, one of the questions I was going to pose to you, but it's not a question, I'm going to make it a statement, and it's like a yes, no, because otherwise we'll drag on for ages. But like in this new world of work, right, when we're on the island, do we need a new kind of people manager? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
We do. Yeah, we do.
All right, so we need a new kind of people manager.
But we need, no, we don't. No, let me stop.
Go.
We need to stop doing stupid stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We don't need a new kind of person. We're all probably pretty good at some part of our job.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that as people managers, what we have to do is stop and say, what is it that we do that matters? What is it that we do that moves the business forward? So in order to do that, we better damn well know what our business is. Yeah. We better know how we make it. We better know what the customers are. We better know what the competitors are. We better know what they're able to do that we can't do. Yeah. And I love that he said, it's our job to say, are all the teams performing as well as they could? Yeah, if they're not, is it because they're the wrong people on the team? Yep. If they're not, is it because people are just tired because they spent 5 years building something and now we're asking them to maintain it and they don't want to. And they're not very good at it, right?
Of course,
so it's about looking at that organization holistically and looking about, I always say start with the P&L and start with your goals and objectives. And like if you're installing a new software system in finance and every quarter someone says it's delayed another quarter because it's not, something's gone wrong or we can't, blah, blah, blah. You dig down in there, there's a people issue in there.
100%.
And the IT guys are going, well, the finance people, they're resisting. The finance people are saying, oh, it's too hard, right? And then you dig down and dig down and dig down and somebody's like, no, my job is data entry. And if we do this new software, I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. So I'll just passively, aggressively not do it.
I love that. And Patty, that is such a good point because it kind of was where directionally you and I wanted to chat about kind of systems thinking. Organizations and systems thinking, because and when we were chatting about it the last day, we talked about we used the analogy of almost the body, and how naive, and I don't even believe people would be saying oh well, the kidneys are more important than the heart or the liver is more important than the spleen, because nobody's that dumb to think that they're not all working in synchronously, everything is in service of everything else. And for some reason, when we approach organizations, we think about it in a really siloed way, right? So sales is more important, ops is irrelevant, and if we think about it the exact same way as the body, one of the challenges, I suppose, or one of the realities of HR is that even if we think about our organizations as systems, we have typically had quite a programmatic or a segmented approach. Or even if we haven't thought about it that way and we're okay, but it's okay, these 5 programs all together equal the bigger thing, the people we work with see them in a very systems or in a very programmatic way. What for you, Patty, is the downside to that, and how would you encourage us to maybe approach that or think about that differently? Because I think that's where directionally you were going there.
The first thing I would say is pay attention to the language we use.
Yeah.
Okay. And stop talking HR speak, please, please, right? I mean, part of it is because we say, we're about to roll out another global HR initiative.
Yeah.
And the entire company rolls their eyes and go, whatever happened to last year's global HR initiative, right? I mean, people are going to be mad at me for this, but God, why do we have to turn everything into it's D&I now.
Yeah, it's a D&I initiative. It'll be a wellness initiative another week. It'll be a something.
Yeah, right. D&I sounds like linens and things, right? It's so we can use multisyllabic words. We can say diversity and inclusion, right? If we want to do that, but for what end?
Yeah.
Right. Are we doing that to right society's wrongs? That's part of it. Yeah. Are we doing it to make sure that we have representation in our company of the customers that we serve? Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Are we doing it because we want to have diverse opinions and perspectives as those? And then if those are the reasons why we're doing this, then are we?
Yeah.
Right. Did we? Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I've spent my whole career, and so have you, rolling out initiatives that have no tie to the business.
No.
And right. I mean, I was thinking about performance improvement plans and performance management and, how I hate the annual performance review. And I was thinking about that compared to your question about, should we operate differently in HR? Should managers operate differently now? Mm-hmm. And so if you can't tie that activity to the performance of the business.
What do you ask?
Annual performance review. What's the point? Okay, why do we do this? We use it as a mechanism to give employees feedback on their performance because we believe that if we do that, that will lead to better performance. Okay, did it?
Yeah, I know.
Are there 5? That's data. What's the data on that, right?
Yeah.
If we gave somebody feedback that 9 months ago they did something that was really bad, did they stop doing it?
Well, chances are we only told them
right. So but that's we got and what to what because the hypothesis is because we believe that giving people feedback results in better performance. Yeah. Okay, if we believe that to be the end game, you're going to create a system that does it once a year.
Yeah, it's insanity.
I mean, that's would we accept that from finance?
No.
We really, those monthly month-end closes, those are really a drag. So we're just going to do quarter-end close from now on.
But if you think about it, Patty, the problem also without the systems mentality around when we just implement things as projects, programs, policies, whatever they are in their smaller elements, is that we don't think about where it all fits together, right? So like if we think, like on one hand, and I would hear this often, and I'm sure you're the same as a HR director or CPO or whatever, is that, I would be like, but feedback is just feedback. But that, in theory, it is, right? But in practice, it isn't. Because the reality is that if you give me crappy feedback and I suddenly go from a 5 to a 3 on my performance rating, then my money's affected, then somebody puts that stupid curve, that bell curve, like the absolutely no logic. Yeah, oh God. So then someone puts the bell curve and then suddenly I'm being managed out, or I can't get my next promotion. So the reality is that we've put systems around things that actually work in total oppositional to what you're trying to achieve. So feedback can never be feedback.
Not only that, it's not transparent.
Oh God, no.
Let's take compensation. Compensation is a great example. Right?
Yeah. Behind the curtain.
You and I know what a bell curve distribution is. You and I know what percentile mark at the 60th percentile, right? I remember coaching a startup, and the HR person says, yes, we've decided to mark our salaries in the 60th percentile. And I said, oh, okay. Can I be an employee? Who gets the other 40%?
Yeah.
She goes, that's not what percentile means. I'm like, I know that, and you know that, and nobody on earth knows. No. When I talk to women's groups, this is my favorite thing to say to them. I'm like, okay, here's the deal. When they talk about engagement, they didn't put a ring on it.
Yeah.
You're not married to them, right? And if you go interview with somebody else, you're not cheating on your husband. You're finding out what you're worth. And by the way, if you're worth 20% more than you're getting paid, right? And you go into a company with 6.5% merit increase budget and a bell curve distribution, and you are amazing. And they say to you, your HR person and your hiring manager goes, you know what? You're so good. We gave you 14%. Don't tell anybody, because 6.5% is the average. But that's because you're supposed to feel really good that you suck by 6%. Compounded. I tell them, I'm like, if it's money you want and that's the way your compensation system works, you will never catch up.
No.
Right. So to HR people, shall I say, the way to fix that problem is to write some checks. If that's a problem in your organization. And then step back and say, has the way we've done compensation really reflected in the real world? So this is a great example of something that we can think about right now in the pause. Right? When we go back, wait a minute. Our 9-box matrix of performance factors system that we've been rolling out globally for as an initiative for the last few years. Did we get it wrong? Did it turn out that quiet person who just was heads down and never really needed that much attention is getting so much work now? Done now, right? Because they're a person that really excels, and I don't need a lot of direction. I actually just let me know where we're going. I'll do the work and get it done. So, that's the thing. 2 things. We don't stop and say, did it work? Why do we do it? And then if we do it for that reason, is that reason being fulfilled? Is it working? And most importantly, if nothing else, my clarion message is, if it doesn't, then stop doing it. Just throw it away.
And that kind of leads me on, Patty, because I'm just kind of conscious of our time as well, is I think that one of the things that sometimes you hear a lot, particularly I know in both of our careers, we've come into, I suppose people will say, well, to fix things, right? And so sometimes the thing you hear a lot is somebody says, well, I'd love to change, I don't know, X or Y, but I can't because, right? And I'm not saying that in every case that there's not a validity to what their, part of the argument is or whatever, but how would you kind of encourage us to think about that? So for someone that's sitting at home and saying, I am so on with what Patty's saying, right? Our comp structure or our feedback structure or our whatever is not what I want it to be. but I can't because. How would you say, right, how do we think about that, Patty? Like what should we be, I suppose, how could we make that possible?
I bet you that a lot of people that say I can't because said, oh no, working from home will never work for us. I can't because it's really important that we be in the office for meetings. We'd like to be able to accommodate that for you, but we can't because. And we did this in 48 hours, right? So every single person on this call has done something they said they couldn't do in the last year. Every single one of us. And you know what? That muscle was there all along. So what I want you to do right now, every single one of you, is pat yourself on the back and say to yourself, wow, I just did something really innovative and really creative for a whole lot of people in a very short period of time. Now, was it perfect from the beginning? No. Right? Did I know how to do it best then? No. Right? Did you take the chance? Yes. Did you have any other alternatives? No. Right? So first of all, I want us to go, we already did something we didn't think we could do.
Yeah. It's totally possible.
Okay, I want you to, I want that in your reptile brains, right? So that the next time you say to yourself, we can't because, say to yourself, wait a minute, I already did. Right? And the other one is the can't because we're not as good as we could be at saying we can because here's the results that we think will be different. Here's how we're going to measure it, right? The other thing, that's not in our lingo that's very personal to me was I was surrounded by people who were inventing things all of the time. And I just paid a lot of attention to how they did it. And how they did it was they said, what's the end game, right? What would be the optimal customer experience? Let's go there. They don't say, wonder what everybody else is doing. You know what? We can make watching television a little bit better than cable, right? No, it was like, let's go way out there. And so we have to start looking at the work that we do in the same way. And here's another thing I learned from them. When you do that, so many of the things I did at Netflix, many of them, I said to the employees, well, every other HR person that I've talked to on the planet thinks it's the stupidest idea I ever had. The lawyers say that if this is like when we get rid of paid time off, the lawyers say that either my HR friends say either nobody will come to work or everybody will work all the time, nobody will take time off. And the lawyers say people are going to take time off in different ways and you're going to be just awash in lawsuits, right? So I said to the folks, I'm like, I don't think so because I don't keep track of it now and work seems to be getting done. So let's try for 6 months this crazy idea of just not bothering with keeping track of that. Right? And if it turns out that they're right and I'm wrong, then we'll just go back and do what everybody else does and call it best practices.
But that's kind of the conundrum, isn't it?
I didn't roll it out as a global HR initiative. I said, you guys with me on an experiment for 6 months?
But Patty, don't you think that's kind of the conundrum that I think we both have experienced a lot in organizations, which is like, so we talk to the employees and we tell everybody how they need to have this growth mindset and we'll bring in speakers and we look at all this great stuff and that's fabulous, right? But actually, we don't live the growth mindset. Like I think Raj talked about it earlier when he was on talking about remote working, and he was saying like whatever's modeled by the C-suite will be what will happen. Or whatever's modeled by the leadership, that will determine the level. And I think that's like a lot of, isn't it, what we do? We are so obsessed with the micro of things, right? So like you and I have talked about this so many times. Like, so we spend all this time trying to woo a candidate and the first thing we hit them with is a giant big legal document that tells them all the ways we can fire them. And it's like, it's those contradictions, right? Like, so we're all the time managing to the lowest common denominator instead of addressing that. And I mean, I think most of my friends know all of my random stories, but I remember, and I obviously won't name names, but when I worked for a company that had a bird for a logo, and there was an incident once with a beer fridge, and and the immediate reaction with most of us as senior leaders was like, okay, we'll need to get together, and everybody's going around the room, what are we going to do about it? And one was like, we should remove the fridge, right? Because of course, take it away. Then the next one was like, well, we should have a policy on it. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh God, please, I don't want to have to be the one that says this. But, eventually when they came around to me and somebody said, well, you're kind of quiet and you're not normally. And I was like, well, I'm trying to be a good leader, which is really hard for me, terrible listener. And I remember it came to me and I said, well, I don't know about you guys, but I know who was here when I left last night at 10 o'clock. So I know the people that were there, and hey, I know some of them because some of them were on my team. And how about we just do a radical thing and actually talk to them? And and the reason I say that, and it might sound trivial, but for me that was such an important and a defining moment, because it was that bit about, it's where we started this conversation, right? It's the rubber hitting the road. It's that bit about saying we're going to treat people like adults, but it is so easy to revert to type, to revert to what we know, to revert to what we're comfortable with, and also what our people are comfortable with, right? Because it's the push and the pull on both sides, Sorry, I'm just.
Well, and I think that it's maybe harder, but not really, to think about. I mean, now is such a good time to think about what really engages people, right? It's a really important time. And my experience is, the beer fridge is such a good example of that particular space and time, right? I mean, I'm not talking to companies who have employees overwhelmingly complaining that they don't have a beer fridge, because they all have their own fridges and some have beer in them. And all of that effort and time we spent making them happy and engaged at work, It did it matter? It didn't really matter, right? And so I found in all of my many, many, many years that the happy and engaged employees are doing work they love with teammates that are really good, and they're accomplishing incredible stuff. I mean, I used to tell the people who did that happy HR work to say, go ask 5 people in your organization that are very well respected. Tell me about something a day that there was something you were really proud about. And every single one of those stories will be about something hard.
Yeah, of course, because it's meaningful.
Right? And it's that we did it thing. And so I think as HR people, that's where we open our eyes and look. Right? Now we look around and go, who pulled off something during all this that wasn't a team I would have expected it from? Right? Who actually kind of stumbled and were stars in the office, right? What happened here? What did we learn from this very forced situation? I mean, and this too, for me, it was always hard. We talked earlier about change, right? The massive organizational changes were what always exposed our strengths and weaknesses, right? And the thing is that every time you hit another one of those steps, it's a new set of strengths and weaknesses.
100%.
So, now it's about saying, was all that stuff that we were all leading up to before this happened useful? And going forward, and it's more important. So I don't want to go back. I don't want us to go back. If we all end up back in the office doing the things like we always do, then don't talk to me anymore. I'm done. I'm not going to feel anymore. But this is our time, right? This is our time to say, let's go forward and create the organizations that we want to work in.
Can I ask you one last question before we finish up? And I'm conscious of the time because I know Rob will be around somewhere with a sheep's crook trying to get me off.
He just wants to get on stage.
Yeah, I know he does. But one question that I think, if I were the average HR person who does have vision and who has passion around this stuff, but is hitting maybe a point where maybe they can't bring the C-suite on the journey, or they're struggling to, right? Because that is the reality. Or they're trying to influence people. I remember a phone call you and I had a couple of years ago where I was like, I just can't get them on board, and you went, maybe you should just leave because they're not going to get it. So I guess there's a part of me in the back of my mind going how would Patty McCord approach it if you were someone who was there, you're kind of pragmatically minded, kind of going, let's move this thing forward, but you're struggling or not struggling, but you need to bring that C-suite or your senior leaders on a journey with you. What would you be doing? How would you be thinking about it? How would you be approaching it, Patty?
I have something I call my algorithm for success.
Oh God,
I use the word algorithm because I worked with all those geeks all those years. They liked it that I said algorithm.
Okay.
So, but mine has words, not numbers, and it goes like this.
Cool.
Is what you love to do, that you're extraordinarily good at doing, something we need someone to be great at? Right? Is what you love to do, that you are extraordinarily good at doing, something we need someone to be great at? And oh, by the way, if that is your passion and your personal journey, and you really want an opportunity to do it, and you've got a convince 11 people who don't think it's important and don't want to do it and think your idea is kind of dumb, then your chances are not very great.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, fine.
And so that's thing one. Thing two is not everything has to be a global rollout.
Yeah.
Right?
Nice.
So one of the things I also learned from innovators is they pick a small group and test.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no reason why everything doesn't have to be the same. Consistency is a really bad, when people are like, well, we do it because we want people to be consistent. I'm like, that's it? That's our bar? The same? Like, it's a pretty low bar. Yes. Everybody does the same stupid stuff, but we do it the same all over the world.
I love this. Great. Go on.
So maybe experiment with a small team of people with an objective in mind. The other thing is you must describe these things that you want to do using the words of the business. Right?
But I'm assuming you're going to say to me, that's not jargon, though. That's using meaningful, simple words that the business uses.
Actual words that people actually use in life.
Okay. Not like high performance.
I'm stringing out your mouth.
Okay, fine.
Stop it, right? Just stop it. We use a language that nobody else understands.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So and oh, by the way, if there's sometimes when when I would take HR people and try and deprogram them, I'm like, tell me that as if I was your grandma. Or a 4-year-old, right? Use just regular words and you'll find that it comes across much quicker. So it is a tussle. Sometimes you find an advocate but if you find an advocate in your company that says, I'm willing to do some experimenting with you, then you have to decide beforehand what the results are going to be. Because that's every other department in the company has to speak to results. And there's no reason you shouldn't be able to too.
Yeah. And I think you and I chatted about it the last day when we were talking about, Norman was talking to me about like this idea of the design mindset, so that you don't start, you start out with like a directional, here's what I'm looking to achieve, but you don't try get there on like step one. So this is this idea of you start with a load of ideas, almost like in a funnel, and then you just start to reduce down, and you're not afraid to iterate and kind of, and I suppose take that feedback and move. Whereas a lot of the time we tend to be like, we're going to implement this or do this, and we go straight from here to here. And there's just no logic to it, is there? But it's almost how we're...
Well, a great example of that is the Netflix culture deck that you quoted, the Sheryl Sandberg quote, right? Guess how long it took us to write that?
Oh, God, go on.
10 years.
Okay, fair enough.
Years. And then Reed rewrote it in the company, and then he just published a book, and probably 10 years from now, there'll be a different one. And it was an iterative process that's never done.
Right?
And
I think one of the things...
So I think you're right. There's two things you said that are really important. One of them is, experiment and iterate, but know what it is that you have in the end in mind. And the second thing is, when you have some of those milestones that you want to achieve to get there, then don't say someday. Right? If you say someday, I think you mean next Thursday, but the person next to me says, oh God, she's been saying someday for 6 years.
God knows when that's going to happen, right?
No, so I mean, that's the other thing that we could get better at as a discipline is wrapping time around what we do. Right. You're right. Begin with the end in mind and what the results are going to be and what's going to be different. Work back to where we are and then stop occasionally and say, did we?
And probably, Patty, more of that MVP mindset, right? That minimal viable product that is so prevalent in the engineering world, right? What is the least amount that we can get out to get feedback on to then figure, is this a good idea or not? Do we build deeper into it or not?
And most importantly, because I know we're coming to the end, most importantly, do not put something on top of something that doesn't work. Right? We think we're tweaking, but we're not. We're like, we still want to do it how we used to do it. But we have this new, we're going to make it on your phone. We're going to make this really bad process mobile.
Well, who doesn't want that, in fairness? I don't know. That sounds winning to me.
Or we won't make it mobile, right? And you have to fill out 5 pieces of paper. Somebody in the mobile team has to fill out all these forms in order to get money to develop a mobile product. It's crazy.
I love it.
That's it's okay
Yeah.
to say, that's not working. We're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So
it's
what
funny,
we want to accomplish.
Patty,
Here's a new way to do it.
just to kind of wrap us up, because I know we're just at time now, and Rob is probably in total disbelief that we're actually on time. We've 39 seconds to go. He's like literally probably having a heart attack. But I think what's really interesting about that, Patty, is this idea of, like, we've talked about humanizing the workplace, but actually what I've taken a lot from the conversation with you is actually humanizing HR, but not externally, but actually for ourselves. Like, actually, how do we think about it? Can we treat ourselves like humans, work in a human way, think about humans? Because if we can do that bit, we can get the next bit right, which is transform the organizations and help the humans in them. So, Patty, with that, just to say, as always, it's been a pleasure. I'm particularly impressed that we haven't used one cuss word between us, and we've managed 45 minutes.
Me too.
Yeah, I'll call you later, though. But thank you so much for your time, and have a good rest of the day. All right. Cheers, Patty. Take care.
Love to all of you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.